All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As a reminder, we'll leave everyone on mute, and please put your questions in the chat so we can answer them at the end of this session. Sarah, do you want to wait a couple minutes, or are you ready to get started?
I think I'm ready to get started. All right, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Williams, and I'm the Public Policy and Advocacy Director for Marion County Commission on Youth. We're also known as MCCOY. MCCOY is proud to host this press conference today, and we have some wonderful speakers lined up to share their thoughts on House Bill 1134. We're all concerned about this legislation because of the impact it will have on teachers, students, and education curriculum in the state of Indiana. It's especially harmful for students of color by abbreviating or even erasing their history and cultural
Recording in progress.
from school curriculum. I also want to remind everyone that we're speaking today of these threats to Hoosier education on the first day of Black History Month, a month to celebrate the achievements of Black Americans and acknowledge the struggles and sacrifices they have endured for hundreds of years in this country. So I will go ahead and let our first speaker begin. Our first speaker is Keith Gamble. Keith Gamble is a middle school music teacher from Evansville, and he is the president of the Indiana State Teachers Association. Keith, you can take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, and good morning to everyone joining us today. Hoosier educators and public school families have resoundingly shared with legislators the importance of an honest and truthful curriculum for our students. Through the testimony of teachers, social media posts, and tens of thousands of emails from educators, parents, and community members, legislators have heard the refrain that students must be equipped with the resources and knowledge to prepare them for the future, no matter their color, background, or zip code. Together, in solidarity, we raise our voices once more. I'm proud to join youth-serving organizations, civil rights organizations, businesses, students, and teachers with the same goal of ensuring all kids have the opportunity to grow and thrive. As educators, we want to prepare children for the future. We must teach them both the good and the bad of our history so we can avoid making the same mistakes. However, legislation aimed at censoring what can be taught in our classroom is under consideration in the General Assembly. House Bill 1134 will stifle future generations, leaving many students without people who look like them in their history books. It will curb and temper educators' ability to bring creativity into learning and place undue burdens on educators in an already challenging environment. The pandemic has now impacted 3 school years. Teachers have been nimble and flexible to teach students wherever and however they could. But it also means that teachers are burnt out and considering whether they can continue in the profession. Facing a teacher shortage in this state and country, now is not the time to place more burdens on teachers, and it is certainly not the time to limit the resources and materials that students can access, especially when trying to reach those most impacted by the pandemic. An educator's primary goal is to prepare our students for the future. We can't ensure our students are ready to be active, informed citizens if we can't let students learn from the mistakes of our past. I want to thank all of our community partners who are standing with educators now to protect our students' freedom to learn. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Pastor Richard Reynolds. Pastor Reynolds is the founding pastor at New Revelation Christian Church, and he is a member of the Indianapolis Ministerium. Pastor Reynolds, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you, Sarah. Our Declaration of Independence begins by saying we hold these truths to be self-evident and we are faced with a political movement that is seeking to suppress the truth. We celebrate truth in America. We don't suppress the truth. We celebrate the truth. We don't hide the truth. When President Trump was in office, he signed an executive order that said that the material presented in what has been called critical race theory is anti-American. Well, I want to submit that controlling education is anti-American. Suppressing the truth is actually anti-American. Suppressing the truth and controlling education smells more like communism and socialism than American. Freedom of expression and education is actually American. We cannot hide from the truth. We cannot suppress the truth. We must embrace the truth. Though the truth hurts, the truth also heals. And if our country is going to heal from this divide that we are experiencing, we must face the ugly truth of American history. This anti-critical race theory legislation, I first compared it to Jim Crow legislation. But it's even worse than Jim Crow legislation. This is slave state legislation seeking to control education and control who can be educated in the same way that legislation during the slave era in America made it illegal for Africans enslaved in this country to be taught how to read. This is slave legislation attempting to be passed in 2020, and it is not acceptable. And it's important for us to stand up now, face this, and fight this with all that we have. The political leaders seeking to control and suppress the truth in education in this way are seeking to reverse the progress that has been made over the last several decades in this country, in the same way that the progress that was made during the Reconstruction era was reversed with Jim Crow legislation. As a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I stand on the reality that the truth will make us free. And so thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you for those who are fighting and lifting up your voices for those who have no voice. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Reynolds. Our next speaker is Dr. Sandy Washburn. Dr. Sandy Washburn is a research scholar at Indiana University and a member of SEL for Indiana, a statewide alliance that works to sustain and spread the use of high-quality, equity-focused SEL, or social emotional learning, by raising awareness of the benefits of SEL, promoting and supporting effective SEL implementation, and advancing SEL-related policies and funding. Dr. Washburn, thank you for speaking today.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the long introduction there. Sorry about that. I just want to say there's broad support for SEL and schools' role in teaching social and emotional life skills, support from educators, from employers, and from parents. The life skills that we teach are empathy, managing emotions, developing relationships, and understanding other points of views and people's backgrounds. SEL implementation in schools is correlated with academic gains, reduced behavior and engagement problems, and student competency with these skills has lifelong benefits for work success, for relationships, for mental health issues, and avoiding addiction. The science is clear. We need SEL in schools. As a grandparent of two children, ages 9 and 13, I have serious objections to H. Bill 1134. As a researcher and an educator, I have serious concerns that the bill's authors did not consult the Indiana Department of Education, nor any educational associations or universities. This bill will hamper schools intentionally teaching SEL, as it requires parent consent for, quote, ongoing conversations related to social emotional training, end quote. This bill will also prohibit schools from assessing the impact of those lessons through self-report surveys, a primary method used to monitor student progress. Schools that do this work well strive to create environments that are safe, they're inclusive, caring, just, supportive, and equitable. These are conditions for learning. The best way we have to gauge whether conditions for learning exist for all students is to ask them. And we typically do this through surveys. We can then look at the data for potential disparities because we recognize our schools have not always met the needs of everyone, particularly children of color. If you doubt this, look at graduation and discipline rates disaggregated by race. House Bill 1134 would unnecessarily hamper schools in surveying students about their school experiences and seriously undermine attempts to make schools equitable. As I mentioned already, a critical life skill, an SEL skill, is the ability to understand others' perspectives and lived experience. By extension, it can also encompass topics such as mental health, bias, racial justice, equity, and identity. This bill will have a chilling effect on teachers' work with SEL, causing them to avoid and neglect lessons and shut down discussions that involve understanding other points of view and others' lived experience. Legislators who support this bill keep throwing around the term divisive concepts, that their aim is to prohibit the promotion of divisive concepts. The truth is, House Bill 1134 ensures that the differences and disagreements that divide us will grow. Educators will avoid and retreat from any topic that is politicized. And what topic is not? Our own state attorney general says that the COVID numbers have been made up, that they are politicized. What will help our society move forward despite our differences? Empathy. And we develop empathy by being exposed to and attempting to understand others' perspectives and others' experience. House Bill 1134 is almost identical to Senate Bill 167, which did not advance to a vote. If the Senate hears this bill, their decision indicates to me that they rejected bringing a vote on Senate Bill 167 only to avoid humiliation in the national spotlight, and not because they thought it a bad bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Washburn. Our next two speakers are students. We are just so excited to have them joining us today to kind of represent student voice. So our first speaker will be Lizzie Koshnick. She is a junior at North Central High School here in Indianapolis, and she's also a member of the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council. Lizzie, off to you.
Thank you. So not only does House Bill 1134 have the power to put an increasing strain on the teachers of Indiana, but it leads to a world with more censorship in education. Letting parents decide what their children are taught at practically every level of curriculum is dangerous because it leads to the possibility of increased censorship in the future. Censorship on history, culture, and education in general is dangerous because it has the power to limit the knowledge of the generation growing into leaders of our world. How will the future leaders of America be able to provide for a country they know nothing about? It is extremely important that today's generation learns about the full history of their country and those around the world, or else we will not have the knowledge to combat the atrocious patterns of history. I believe that the obligation to educate students about their history is more important than comfortability with the curriculum. Teaching real history will not bring children down based on the color of their skin, but will raise them up and inspire them to stand up and not repeat gruesome patterns in world history. Teachers are already loaded with so much work, not to mention the increased online presence they have to keep as a result of the pandemic. Think of the pressure that teachers would face in having to get their material pre-approved. Where is the line drawn? If this bill is passed, who knows what the next step could be for education? I do not want to see the future's generation of students robbed of important aspects of history, big or small, black or white, male or female, etc. I don't want to see the kids growing up in a world where they aren't fully aware of the impacts of their ancestors and aren't given the tools to combat racism and bigotry. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lizzie. Our next student speaker is Justin Leem Lerrero. Justin is a senior at Heron High School, also here in Indianapolis. He's a local community activist who's been working on political campaigns in the community since he was 12 years old. He's also a member of the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council, and he's a member of the IPS Superintendent Advisory Council. Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. The name of this bill is Education Matters, but this bill is far from promoting equal education. HB 1134 aims to limit the teaching of issues on sex, religion, race, and political affiliation. As a senior in high school, I see that the education of future generations are at risk. It's important for us students to be well-rounded learners and critical thinkers, and I trust my teachers and the curriculum being taught to me that allow me and my peers to grow. We learn to develop our minds as well as who we are as people. Sadly, this bill is the definition of disruption to education in the state of Indiana. It is a disruption of the progress we have made as a society to understand the history of race in America and its effects on current events. As well, this bill has the power to remove or alter our true understandings of our history, of our country's history. It is a disruption for not only students' education, but a disruption for the thousands of teachers across the state of Indiana. It's time to listen to the Indiana State Teachers Association, parents, teachers, and students like me who have spoken against this education legislation. HB 1134 is wrong, flawed, and does not nor will ever promote education. So today I encourage everyone to contact the legislators to demand that they vote no. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate you guys being here today. Our next speaker is Christianne Bibi. Christianne Bibi is in her 21st year of teaching 4th and 5th grade high ability students in Brownsburg, Indiana. She testified against HB 1134 and the original Senate Bill 167 in their respective Education Committee hearings. She and her husband, a high school administrator in Indianapolis, have 2 children currently in Brownsburg schools and another who is a recent Brownsburg High School graduate. Ms. Bibi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Christianne Bibi, and I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher in Brownsburg. First of all, I do sincerely appreciate Representative Cook amending HB 1134 before passage. However, the bill as currently written remains problematic. I think the lack of transparency around the problems we are supposedly having with a lack of transparency in our schools needs to be addressed before we implement such an onerous solution. Neither the legislature nor the Attorney General's office has truly quantified the extent with which curriculum transparency is a problem in Indiana schools. I have heard legislators say they have heard from hundreds or thousands of people across the state with concerns, but we have over 1 million students enrolled in Indiana schools. The assumption seems to be that the hundreds of thousands of parents who haven't complained to legislators about this issue are just uninvolved or disengaged parents. But the reality is that the overwhelming majority of Hoosier parents simply trust their children's teachers and recognize them as professionals. They know that they can go to their child's teacher with curriculum questions and have a dialogue about what is being taught. They know that effective teachers sometimes appear to take controversial stances on issues and use materials with extreme viewpoints just to encourage students to think critically about their own opinions. However, despite not examining the extent to which this is a problem in Indiana, or if the root of the problem is things like FERPA or copyright laws or subscription limits, this bill will not fix. Legislators are proposing a 4-tiered solution that will add layers of bureaucracy and additional burdens to the workload of all educators in Indiana. I understand that the bill still allows the teaching of historical facts. However, the mere presence of this law will keep too many teachers from talking about hard truths, both historical and ongoing, in their classrooms. Teachers may have no doubt that certain lessons or materials fit within the letter of this law, but this bill still encourages a parent to challenge those things in a bureaucratic process that may take 23 weeks before a court even gets involved. Teachers will fear being turned in by a parent who doesn't understand the nuances of this law because they know that will mean spending hours and hours outside of their other school responsibilities defending themselves to others. Hoosier teachers are concerned about having their professional reputations damaged in their communities, even if they are eventually cleared by the school board of any wrongdoing. Administrators will instruct their teachers to not use materials that parents could oppose because the time and expense of mounting a defense is just too great. Students will be deprived of exposure to materials and class discussions that will help them build critical thinking skills and better understand our present society and our nation's history. Indiana legislators have said that they want teachers to just teach the facts, and I absolutely agree. But some parents don't actually want schools to teach their children facts if those facts make them uncomfortable. We live in a culture where people dismiss facts they simply don't like as propaganda or attempts at indoctrination or fake news. Some believe that teaching those facts must be done with the intention of causing children to feel guilt or discomfort or distress. Passing this law will empower some to continue to reject uncomfortable facts and send a message to students in our state that hard truths can simply be ignored. It will not prepare Hoosier students to be more competitive in this world. It will simply shield them from confronting realities that let them develop important skills in empathy, critical thinking, and self-reflection. Our legislators too frequently forget that Hoosier teachers are their constituents too. And we, in addition to many parents and other community members, want our senators to pass on hearing HB 1134.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bibi. Our next speaker is Dr. Ivan Douglas Hicks. Dr. Hicks holds a PhD in African history from Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He serves as Vice President of the Greater Indianapolis NAACP and provides primary leadership to the ministerium. He is a professor of African Studies at IUPUI and serves as the pastor of First Baptist Church, North Indianapolis. Dr. Hicks, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to McCoy for coordinating our effort, and to all of the advocates that are with us on the line on today. I am third vice president of the Greater Indianapolis NAACP, and on behalf of our president, Krista Ratcliffe, ask that you pray for her as she deals with things that this time is sending our way. But on behalf of her and our constituency, the community we serve, we stand in opposition to House Bill 1134. We are concerned that students will have creativity stifled. We are concerned that the students will not see themselves in the lessons they are being taught, which we have discovered is extremely important for young people to understand where they have come from. If we don't understand where we come from, then there's no way we can chart the appropriate course for tomorrow. And so we want to support teachers as well. The censorship that we see in this bill will require such supervision that is almost too arduous to deal with. And so we want teachers to be free to teach. We want students to be free to learn. There are 5 laws on the books right now that the NAACP and other advocacy organizations have sought to have as a part of the school improvement plans. Cultural competency training is required. There are 5 Indiana state statutes that are in place already. This bill does not consider the laws that are in place. In 2017, the NAACP worked to institute an ethnic studies law. That law is in place. And House Bill 1134 runs roughshod, not just over legislation, but then as well does not take into consideration the financial impact, not just from instituting the law, but from the lawsuits that will come from this heinous and racist law that does not need to pass. And so we commend all of the advocates of Indianapolis, and we need to reach out throughout Indiana. We need to ensure that we are doing everything we can do to stop this bill that is a regressive and unimaginative bill that has come down through terrible lines and without censorship to the State House of Indianapolis, Indiana. This law does not allow for us to examine everybody's culture. We ought to be free to learn of ourselves, but we also need to learn of everybody else's culture. And we need to learn in these culturally polarizing times how every culture has merit and worth, and how if we learn to appreciate one another, what we will discover is that we have more in common than we do at odds with one another. And so if we are going to spawn the global leaders, there's going to have to be global learning that includes the harsh truth and the harsh realities of our past. We need to make sure we are teaching the truth. This is an anti-truth bill. And so we come standing with the support of not just those on this press conference, but those that are throughout the state of Indiana that are opposed to this bill moving forward. And we deem it and declare it to be both heinous and racist. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hicks. Our next speaker is Dr. Gwen Kelly. Dr. Gwen Kelly is an educational consultant, community advocate, and a former research associate for the Equity Project at Indiana University, where she provided technical assistance to district leadership teams across the state, focusing on reducing disproportionality in suspension, expulsion, and placement practices, and working with positive behavioral and intervention support in Indiana. Dr. Kelly currently serves as a board vice chair for the Children's Policy and Law Initiative of Indiana. Dr. Kelly, thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I have the unique opportunity of working with several organizations within the community. As House Bill 1134 crosses out of the House chamber into the Senate with its outcome deliberated, there is an outcry in the community about the negative impact this bill will have on teachers, students, their parents, and the community as a whole. In all of the discussions among the members of every organization I work with, there is an extreme concern about the toxic damage that House Bill 1134 will cause. The Black organizations and voices that I work with and that I hear include the Indianapolis Alliance of Black School Educators and its national affiliate, the Indianapolis branch of the NAACP, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Alpha Mu Omega Chapter, the National Council of Negro Women, and Freetown Village Living History Museum. Yes, I work with the Children's Policy and Law Initiative as Vice Board Chair, known as CPLI, and I'm a member of the steering committee of the Indiana Coalition for Juvenile Justice, which is hosted by CPLI. We all stand in opposition to House Bill 1134. Even with all the amendments added, this bill still camouflages the desire to silence history, its impact on Black and brown children across the state, and how they perceive themselves in our society. Although we are told that a few parents sparked this bill being made, I have not met one single Black or brown parent in our community, not a parent, grandparent, faith-based community member, or youth worker who stands in favor of this bill. This devastating effect that House Bill 1134 has is not colorblind, but divisive. House Bill 1134 seeks to disrupt the gains we have pushed for and achieved through previous legislation that Dr. Hicks talked about as defined in code. There is a cultural competency bill that was passed in 2004. There is a teacher practitioner license bill that was passed in 2008. A positive behavior intervention and support bill in 2013, and culture responsive school climates in 2015, and the ethnic studies law enacted in 2017. House Bill 1134 is in stark contradiction to the expected outcomes of these prior enacted legislations. Already, teachers are fearful of losing their licenses and becoming fined for speaking truth and trying to help our Indiana children become critical thinkers and problem solvings. A colleague shared in a text to me this week, I am a licensed mental health counselor. I have taught multicultural sensitivity and diversity in all my coursework, attended workshops, seminars, and trainings, and consistently evaluated in all my understanding of racial and cultural differences. And as part of recognizing differences in teaching racial and cultural history, the truth about American history is brutal and barbaric. What are you encouraging our position to be on this bill, and why? I encourage all to oppose the bill. Why? The bill seeks to ban any teaching that would cause any teacher, student, or parent to feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of the individual's sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin, or political affiliation, with the threat of a $1,000 fine if they are reported for upsetting someone. With an already reduced pool of individuals coming into the teaching workforce, this bill would add layers of complexity and hardship on our recruitment efforts, both for reluctant Black, white, and other underrepresented groups of teachers who want to empower our students with truth. I oppose House Bill 1134 and urge all of you who love freedom of thought and concern about our children's well-being and working for a better society to fight its passage and enactment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. Our next speaker is Russ Skiba. Russ Skiba is a professor emeritus in the School of Education at Indiana University in Bloomington. As former director of the Equity Project at Indiana University, he and his team conducted research on the causes of and remedies for disproportionality in school discipline. Thanks so much for being here today, Russ.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It is an absolute truth that institutions need constant attention. There is no institution in the world that does not need continuing self-reflection to make sure it's achieving its goals. We should always support those who honestly recognize and seek collaborative solutions to the problems that confront our institutions. But this bill is neither honest nor collaborative. It is a cynical and dishonest attempt to impose by force a destructive and racist worldview on Indiana's schools, that is, on teachers, students, administrators, parents, and communities, especially communities of color. This bill did not emerge from the mouths of concerned parents, white or black. It was the product of a young freelance journalist who was seen by Donald Trump on Fox News and invited to help write Trump's Executive Order 13950, an order that sought to eliminate any attempt in schools, in businesses, in government to talk about race and racism. HB 1134, like copycat bills across the nation, was taken virtually word for word from that executive order. This bill is intended, and I repeat, intended to strip frontline educators of tools they need to help children achieve critical thinking, and to impose harsh and unreasonable penalties on anyone who dares to think about the world in a different way than its authors do. Those who spoke to you today are not opposed to self-reflection about our educational institutions. Many on this panel have been among the strongest and most consistent voices in our state seeking to improve education for all Indiana students, whatever their race, religion, gender, or politics. But these groups and individuals who would welcome any sincere attempt to improve the education of Indiana students were not consulted or contacted during the crafting of this bill. That type of cooperation would have defeated the cynical intent of those who originally wrote the words of this bill, to impose their rash and, yes, racist vision on the rest of us, particularly our schools. The coalition of stakeholders speaking to you today represent more than 80 organizations and thousands upon Hoosiers who have been not merely uncomfortable, but scared to death by the very real and great harms this bill would do to Indiana's students, schools, and communities. I know that all of the organizations present here today and many more would be thrilled to work with our legislators to implement school improvement models that build rather than dismantle a strong and responsive educational system in Indiana. In the meantime, it is time to put this toxic bill to rest and start over with honesty, transparency, and collaboration to promote legislation that ensures our schools are doing what all Hoosiers want them to do: provide effective and equitable education for all Indiana's children. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Russ. Our final speaker today is Marshawn Woolley. Marshawn Woolley is Public Policy Director for the African American Coalition of Indianapolis, and he's a policy advisor to the Indianapolis Urban League and Indiana Black Expo. He's also a Pike Township parent of a 4th grader at Fishback Creek Public Academy. Marshawn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. As was stated before, I represent a number of Black-led organizations who are very much concerned about the bill HB 1134 and its process as it's moving through the General Assembly. But I have to pause and acknowledge that the most important hat that I am wearing right now is that of a father who has a son in 4th grade who's currently trying to learn. And me and him recently, we've been talking about Madam C.J. Walker. He had the opportunity to select someone that he wanted to do a report on, and he chose Madam C.J. Walker. In his report, he talks about how Black people were treated poorly, and how Madam C.J. Walker created a product that not only helped the Black community deal with certain issues at that time, but Madam C.J. Walker was also able to overcome racism and become a successful self-made millionaire. With this bill, I don't know what would happen to my son's report. It is unclear. The divisive concepts that are embedded in HB 1134 potentially make my son's discussion of the true history and one of the significant factors of a Madam C.J. Walker potentially harmful. Somehow it's twisted. And now my son can't talk about the truth of an American hero who did so much because it might make someone feel uncomfortable. I think this bill lacks the balance. I think it is disingenuous. I think the divisive concepts and the way that they are set up are in fact divisive and very much political. We know where they came from. And we think that this is just really, if it was truly about parent transparency, then I think Black parents would have been engaged. They want to know about what's going on with their kids. I can tell you right now, I can go to Canvas and look at what my son is learning. I already know that. I'm engaged. I can talk to my teacher and resolve issues. The teacher doesn't need a threat of revocation of their license. We don't need to be policing the classroom. And I think it's just really a slap in the face to the profession of teachers. I think it interferes with the relationship between the parent and the teacher and the student in ways that will have significantly detrimental unintended consequences and maybe even intended consequences moving forward. So I think I want my son to be able to learn about history. I need him to learn about the challenges that Black people have faced and other people have faced. I also want white kids to learn that as well. And it's important that they do. I don't want white kids to be called oppressors and I don't want my son to be called oppressed. I know that there could be bad actors, but you don't create an entire law to go after bad actors. And as a parent, I just am extremely concerned about the direction that Indiana is going if this bill were to advance. And so I appreciate the time and the opportunity to share the experience that I'm having right now with my son as we're trying to navigate this situation.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words of wisdom. All right, so that wraps up our speakers portion. Thank you to all of the speakers who participated today. Everybody just provided such wonderful remarks. We will open it up now for questions from the press. So you can either unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can ask a question in the chat.
We had one question while we were waiting, and it says, which out of the state organizations and lobbyists have contributed to the legislators that are supporting HB 1134? And does this bill also place the same restrictions on private charter schools?
Go ahead, Sandy.
I'm pretty sure it does not place the restrictions on private charter schools. I could be wrong about that, but I remember seeing in the beginning of each section sort of definition of qualified school, and private charters aren't in there. I don't know about the other part of the question.
Private schools that receive public vouchers are exempt from this bill.
think I can speak to the other part of that question. I think from the press conference today, it's pretty clear who those organizations are, both representing teachers, communities, and parents, who those in opposition are. I've had a chance to talk with a number of legislators and to hear the speeches of a number of legislators. And I have never heard anyone who has crafted this bill or is supporting it in the legislature. I've never heard anyone speak or identify any parent organization that has stood up and contacted them. They talk about parents generically, but there has yet to be any transparency on the part of legislators as to which organizations those are.
Do we have any other questions, any comments?
I do think from the teacher perspective and from the parent perspective as well too. So like I said, I'm a teacher, but I'm also a parent of a recent Brownsburg High School graduate and of a current Brownsburg High School student. And my daughters have both taken part in lots of advanced placement courses and dual credit courses and Project Lead the Way courses and all those things that we want our Hoosier children to be able to have in order to, gain entrance to competitive universities and those things. But, the curriculum and materials for all of those courses are usually not selected by the individual school district or the teacher. And using specific materials that sponsoring universities or organizations provide is often a requirement for being able to have and host that class or for students in the class to receive credit. So if a governing body has to follow, or if they choose to follow the advisory opinion of their district curriculum review committee and refuse to allow some books or materials to be used because they are supposedly not representative of the community's interest, then it's unclear what could happen to those courses. Those are situations where those are, hey, the College Board says this is the material that you teach. This is the essays that you use and the books that you have. And so I think that's a part of the bill that has not been addressed very much, but it certainly is a concern for educators.
Thanks, Christianne. That was powerful. Do we have any more questions or any press want to ask questions, or we can follow up in our press packet that has been shared directly, and we'll have a follow-up email as well. Thank you. Hearing lots of things in the chat about support for teachers and testimony opposing this bill, which is incredible. Sarah, you want to close us out?
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I think that, we heard a lot of powerful words today in opposition of this dangerous bill. And I think it gives us all to think about, to have items to think about, especially in moving forward in advocacy efforts to kill the bill, which is 1134. Currently, the bill has passed the House of Representatives, and it has been referred to the Senate. We are expecting it to be introduced in the Senate, and then it will be referred to a Senate committee. Most likely it'll be the Senate Committee on Education. So we will plan on keeping a close eye on the movement of the bill and keep a close eye on when the bill will be scheduled for a hearing. And I hope that everybody here today will be paying close attention. If you also oppose the bill, please consider submitting testimony, whether in person or written testimony. We're happy to work with you on that. So thank you everybody for being here today. And we look forward to continuing to work together to protect Hoosier children and Hoosier teachers. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Maddie, is there anything else you need from the speakers today?
Sorry, you all are good to go. Thank you so much for an amazing press conference. Your words were really powerful, and I really appreciate all that you've done.
Thank
It
you.
was
Thank you
wonderful
for
to meet.
hosting.
Thank you.
Maddie, where are you off to?
I'm going to the Mid-States Minority Supplier Development Council. So I'll be their Marketing Communications Director.
Excellent. Well, good luck.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I will miss McCoy dearly in events like this.
Mm-hmm. It's good work, though. It sounds like you're still going to be doing good work.
I will. I get to see what the kids do next is kind of how I see it, right? Once they become entrepreneurs and rock stars, I like to think of it that way.
Yeah, excellent. All right. It was nice to see everyone. So I have one question. If the bill goes to the Senate committee, will they take public testimony again? Janae, you probably know that.
Well, I think they probably will, because the bill is not the same as what Senate Bill 167 is. It would be quite a slide if they just
recording stopped.
So, and when we met with Representative Boehning, he said there would be. So I've never seen a bill that crossed where there was change